All right, happy Tuesday. Thanks for hopping on NCSA Live. The dual box working here. Danny Koenig. I'm David Kamisek. Danny, how are we doing?
Doing okay. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for everyone tuning in, whether you're on Facebook or Twitter. We appreciate you hopping on NCSA Live as we do every Tuesday here at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. We're going to talk about the recruiting process, get as much education information out as possible to help you as a parent, student athlete, make sure you guys are taking the right steps here in the recruiting process. So as we do every week, we're going to open it up to any questions. So whether, again, you're on Facebook or Twitter, whatever platform you're watching us on, feel free to jot down any questions you have, whether it be about the topic at hand or anything in the recruiting process. And we'll get to as many as we can here later on in the broadcast. But an important one for today, Danny, is involving college coaches and student athletes reaching out to college coaches and trying to figure out if you're a student athlete, if you're trying to reach out to a college coach, what do you say? More importantly, what questions do you ask to a college coach? You were a student athlete, you were a college coach, you've been on both ends of that spectrum.
Yeah, I'd like to think that all of our topics are very important here, but I think this one's a little bit more personal. So, kind of that general fear if I'm, 15, 16, 17 years old, I'm a high school student, actually reaching out to a college coach can be a little bit intimidating. It's really not that intimidating. It's part of the process and something that college coaches are expecting of student athletes in high school. So, yeah, we're talking about questions to ask college coaches. I think we're talking about athletic fit, asking about academic fit, asking about culture. So campus culture, team philosophy, financial fit. I think a pretty big topic for a lot of parents out there, certainly as we discuss scholarships. But also questions to avoid asking college coaches, things you might want to shy away from, at least initially. Not that they're that important. So kind of addressing that, the human element up front. What should I be asking a college coach? Of course, our recommendation is that you should be proactive. This is kind of putting that into practice. So let's talk about some questions to ask college coaches. So for most sports, coaches can begin reaching out to athletes as of June 15th after their sophomore year, in some cases September 1st of their junior year. But that important date is coming up for our sophomores. Right, they're just having graduated. June 15th is right around the corner here. So it's important for a recruit to ask good questions to college coaches. You can reach out and it kind of, the messaging there is that the student athlete really cares about the program and wants to learn more. So aside from the questions that we'll go over here, I think it's a good idea to ask coaches directly how coronavirus is impacting their recruiting process, in addition to some of the things that you may want to know about their program. So David, lay it on us here. What to ask college coaches about athletic fit? Let's start there.
Yeah, I think a lot of things can factor in that. Number one, you need to figure out, I think, if you're a good fit for their program. So I think, number one, if you do the research on the program and you start to understand that school and typically what their program is all about, you should hopefully have some information about the type of student athletes they recruit, the positions they're looking for, maybe things like that. But I think it's important to know where's that school at with your recruiting class, right? So if you're heading into your junior year, your senior year, where are they at? Do they have kids that have already offered scholarships and accepted scholarships? Are they recruiting 17 other kids that are at your position? So figuring out, how much roster space does that school have available for your class, and then trying to figure out where you might fit into that. And then again, evaluating student athletes. You talked about it a little bit earlier. Kind of the hot topic the last few months, obviously, has been recruiting within the coronavirus and COVID, and the limited opportunity that coaches have with the NCAA rules about them not being able to go out and travel. That dead period's currently until July 31st. Over the past 3.5 months, these coaches have been kind of sitting at home like the rest of us have. So, asking how are you evaluating kids? Is there camps that you guys are having? A lot of schools aren't doing that this summer and likely won't be doing that this summer. So whether it's video or whatever the case is, trying to figure out how can I get my information to you and what are you looking for out of a student athlete? And I think that's really important, Danny, right? Each coach, each program's looking for something a little bit different. So one school might love you as a shortstop. The other school might not have any interest in you as a shortstop. So it can vary by program what that coach is looking for, kind of the DNA of that program, and what kind of student athlete they're looking to recruit.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, I was a college swim coach for a long time. That was very times based. So a lot of what I was presenting to a student athlete is, it was basically very centered around scoring at our conference championship meet. That was a big deal. Of course, coaches are always looking to recruit that next NCAA championship qualifier. But realistically, up front, it's about, hey, can you score points for us at conference? Here's a table of what's scored at our conference meet last year. So they're going to be looking for that. But like you said, for a shortstop, some of those positions, maybe if you take football in particular, coach, I'm a middle linebacker. To what degree do you place emphasis on defense to help you win games or win championships? Even for your own training, your own athletic fit for that program and being able to prove that, hey, coach, how do you prefer that I share my updates with you, on my athletic progress and where I may be able to fit into your program? Because you want to make sure that you're effectively communicating to the college coach what you bring to the table for their program. Another really good question, that if you're on campus, you sat in the office with the college coach, they're showing you the facilities, the weight room, these sorts of things. Coach, what is a typical day like for a member of your team during the season? What can I expect on a daily basis being at your organization, your institution, and kind of working within your coaching philosophy? Coach, what are the top 3 things a high school athlete might experience when coming to your program? What would your current players say about you in 3 words? So you start to get a good sense for athletically where you're going to fit into that, if that's a good fit for you, but also if you're going to be of value to that coach. So, I think that's important, to have that experience and understand what you're walking into at any given institution. And the answer is going to be different for every college coaching staff. So shifting gears a little bit more towards the academic side of things, because ultimately that's why you're going to school. The very vast majority are not going to go to the professional league, and you need to come away with a good degree. So academics are going to be as important as anything. So David, what are we asking college coaches about academic fit?
Yeah, I think it really depends on what you're looking for out of a student athlete, right? If you have a specific major in mind, or if you have a specific area of study, number one, you need to make sure that that school is going to have that available. And if they do have that available, is it feasible to be a student athlete at your school, play that sport, but also have that major? There are some academics and majors that just take a lot of time, and some coaches don't necessarily want to be having a student athlete that's got to have that much dedication in the classroom. Obviously, they want them to be dedicated, getting good grades, but sometimes it's just not feasible to be a pre-med major and to play a sport in college. So I think you can ask questions like, hey, what sort of majors do student athletes on your roster have at the school? I think it's important to realize if those majors, again, are specific to what you're looking for. Is that going to be something where I can be a student athlete? As you mentioned, Danny, not being able to just take the athlete part, you need the school part in there as well. I think one thing that's the great part of being a student athlete is the resources that these programs, these schools have available to student athletes. We're talking about tutoring and kind of study hall sessions and having people available to further assist them with that. So ask that, is there an advisor? Is there tutoring with the program? What sort of schedule does that fit into in terms of schoolwork and having the time to do that in addition to practices and workouts and travel and games, making sure that that's a good fit for the entire program as well. But also, Danny, what are the academic goals of your team, right? What are the academic goals of your program? What are you looking for from a student athlete to maintain eligibility, but to keep a good standing in that school? And again, Danny, as you know, you've coached at some high academic schools. You know that depending on the school, that can be more strenuous at certain schools than it would be at others.
Absolutely. And I think, I appreciate you bringing that up about having a coach show you some of those extra pieces of academic help. Because when I was coaching at a high academic school, that was basically what I was showcasing for those student athletes. They were very academically driven. And a lot of my quote unquote pitch to these athletes when they were on campus, we're an academically driven institution. And these are the ways that we support that as coaches in the structure of our program, to allow you the freedom to be able to study at a very high level and pay attention to that, understanding that that's a primary goal for any student athlete that would be a part of that high academic institution. So the other one you touched on here, just making sure that the major is there. So I had coached at a Division I institution that did not offer nursing. So I knew nursing and engineering were big ones. If I saw on an NCSA profile that a student athlete was interested in studying nursing or engineering, I wasn't necessarily going to try and recruit that kid because it wasn't going to be an academic fit. On the flip side, that school had a really good business school. So, to be able to market that to athletes that are interested in business is going to be very, very important. But at the end of the day, a big part of what I was aiming to do as a college coach, and some of the questions that you could be asking to a college coach are, what systems do you have in place through your athletic program to help support me as a student? And I think you'll get a very good sense for that up front based on how the college coach markets their school. So, for instance, if you're on an unofficial visit there, you're with the coach, they're taking you around the athletic department, and they make a point to highlight their academic services. If you get to sit down to a 10 to 15-minute meeting with the academic services represented within the athletic department, that's a pretty good sign. And most athletic departments are going to offer something in terms of either academic space or some kind of academic help that a college coach should want to be able to showcase. So as the student athlete and as a family, a very fair question is, hey, coach, what kind of systems does the athletic department have in place to help my son or daughter as a student? And then, yeah, like you said, talking about the goals. What are the goals of the program? Do you want to hold a B or above? Do you want to be best in the conference in terms of team average GPA? And again, that's something that a college coach should be able to speak to directly. So once again, shifting gears away from the academic side of things, this is going to be something that is very, very important for a lot of the student athletes because this is more your day-to-day life. What to ask college coaches about cultural fit within their team in the athletic department. Can you speak to that a little?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of factors that go into kind of cultural, right? You could talk about the location of the school, you could talk about the program, the city the school's in, the environment it's in, but specifically to the team, what's the team dynamic like, right? What does the team do? Are there things that they do outside of practice and outside of the games? Are they getting together, whether it's doing stuff in the community or whatever is important to you? But again, the academic fit is obviously important, but you need to fit in as well and feel like you're part of a home there, right? So again, does the housing situation for athletes, a lot of times athletes have a little better situation in terms of their kind of first dibs on places they live, and what's the campus like for athletes? Are kids staying on campus in the summer? Are they working out with the team? Are they heading home? There's a lot of factors that could be relating to that, and obviously the further from home you are as a student athlete, you need to make sure how do people get there? Is there an airport in the neighborhood? Is there a train station? Whatever that might be. So culturally can mean a lot of different things, but I think it's important to realize that not only does the athletic fit have to be good and the academic fit, but it has to be a place that you feel at home, right? My parents tell the story when I went to the school that I ultimately decided that I was going to go to. I came home and I said, it feels like home. It feels like that's where I belong. It feels like that's the right fit for me. And that was a major impact in my decision as to why I went to Marquette University. So again, that can be a lot of different things, but again, the team dynamic of it, the living environment, the on-campus environment, that can play a big part, and is sometimes not maybe as valued in the recruiting process because kids are so focused on playing somewhere and getting an opportunity to be a college athlete somewhere that often gets kind of maybe put to the background, and can often result in someone being unhappy where they then want to transfer, whatever the case is. So again, that cultural fit can equally be as important as the athletic and the academic fit in a lot of student athletes and a lot of families and parents as well.
Yeah, and I got to jump in here because this is something that I had experienced as a coach. This isn't necessarily that cultural fit isn't necessarily something that you're going to be able to learn more about simply by asking a coach, right? And ideally, you're to a position in your recruiting where you have multiple opportunities to visit several different campuses of all kinds to just have those experiences, because you never really know what's going to jump out at you. I promise you, every single college coach in the country is going to tell you we're like a family, right? They're going to say, hey, we work really hard to work on the cohesiveness of the team, this and that. They're going to tell you that, right? But your best inference of what that program is all about is to actually visit that school, but also speak with the team, right? And you're going to get a sense if there's cliques, kind of clickiness within the team. How often are they spending time together? What are the activities that they're doing outside of school and their sport? And that's where you start to get that feel for what is this about culturally, and do I fit in here? Was I welcomed by that program? Am I going to be treated well as a freshman? right? How do the upperclassmen and the captains kind of handle their business? So there are certain things that you could talk to a college coach about, kind of ask them about, what are some of the challenges you've had here recently? How have you addressed certain issues within the team culturally, maybe in the last year or so? Because it's always changing and evolving. It's never the same from year to year. But like I said, hopefully everybody gets to that point, probably in their junior or senior year, where they get the chance to actually visit that program, meet some of the team members, ask them those questions. That's going to be really important moving forward. So just my little bit of college coaching experience there. So let's move on here. What to ask college coaches about financial fit. This is going to be a really big one for parents that are trying to learn a little bit more about opportunities for scholarships. So if we could just briefly go through some of the great questions you could ask to see if a school is the right financial fit for you.
Yeah, I think first of all, you have to understand, depending on the school, what sort of scholarship money is even available for sports, right? We know that the Division III level, there is no athletic scholarship at any sport. So if you're going to a Division III school, you have to understand that there's not going to be any sort of athletic money. So what sort of money might be available to supplement that, whether it be financial aid, whether it be grants, whether it be academic scholarships. You have to first understand what money is available at those schools, because not every school, not every sport at the Division I or Division II level is throwing full scholarships around. Very rarely, in fact, in most sports, do they offer a full scholarship. Majority of the time, it's going to be a partial athletic scholarship, maybe a partial academic scholarship. So you have to ask the coach, what sort of money are you going to have available? For certain programs that may only have 4 scholarships to use for their entire team, they may only have a half a scholarship available. So again, you can ask a coach that question. Probably something you shouldn't ask super early in the recruiting process. We're going to get to some questions that you should avoid. I'm going to put that on there early on here. Avoid asking scholarship questions in your first conversation with a college coach. That's a down the line one. But again, you need to understand the money that's available. Certainly if you're looking for academic scholarships, what grades might put you in a position to earn any academic money, because you could possibly get a partial athletic, partial academic scholarship. Are there work study opportunities to develop scholarship aid? And then ultimately, what's going to go into that coach's decision, right? Again, Danny, that's something that's difficult to understand. It's not something that's there's a lot of gray area there, right? It's not very, hey, every coach is going to offer this kid this scholarship. Some coach might offer you half of a scholarship, another coach might not offer you a scholarship at all. So you have to know, what are they looking for out of their scholarship athletes? And again, relating back to what we talked about with academic and even athletic fit earlier, do I fit that for what this program is looking for? And are they willing to ultimately spend some of their scholarship money to have me on their team?
Yeah, that's right. So, and again, keep in mind that coach is paying for you to go to school there. They're kind of offsetting tuition. So that's going to be a big factor. Is this person at risk from an academic standpoint? Is it worth using some of my scholarship money? And we had done a previous live topic on scholarships and equivalency sports, and that a lot of programs are not fully funded. And I think something that's a totally fair question to ask the coach up front: is your program fully funded? And what that means from an NCAA perspective is that program is working with the maximum allowed scholarship number for their sport, right? So for swimming on men's side, 9.9 scholarships is fully funded. Coach, are you fully funded? The other one that you had brought up here recently, what is your process? Does the school offer an opportunity to earn scholarships, a merit scholarship? So that's based on your grades, your unweighted GPA, and your test scores. And coach, do you have the ability to act as a liaison between myself and the financial aid department to learn what kind of merit money I may be eligible for? So those things I think are more process-based than really attacking the coach and kind of asking for a scholarship up front, which is something you do not want to do. So let's kind of dive into that here a little bit. Some questions to avoid asking college coaches. And these are basically things that will make a coach less interested in you. So there can be some harm done to inquiring in the wrong way. So let's dive into the what not to do here. David, what are some of those things to avoid asking?
Yeah, I think anything that you can research on your own is something that you probably want to avoid asking, right? Research is an important part in the recruiting process, and there's a reason why, right? College coaches expect recruits to have a basic understanding about their program, their school. So you don't want to ask questions like, hey, do you have my major? right? How did you guys do this past season? What conference are you guys in? Who are your coaches, right? That's stuff that you can find online, and you should come prepared with knowing that, right? If you come to a campus or you're talking to a coach asking those questions, as a coach, the student athlete hasn't done the research on my program. So are they even taking my school seriously, right? If I'm a coach and I'm setting aside a time to have a conversation with you as a student athlete, I've done my research as a coach to have myself educated on this conversation. So as student athletes, you should be expected to do the same. You should know the school, where it's located, again, the conference, the team's record, how they've done in recent years, the style of offense they play. Again, be a nerd, do your research, come in having that information. You're going to impress a coach more by having that information available and knowing that. That's going to help you and not make you seem like you're just an idiot and you're willing to talk to any coach that's willing to talk to you, because coaches can sift through that, right? You have to make a good first impression in life in general, certainly in a recruiting conversation, in that conversation with a college coach, Dan.
Yeah, just making sure that you're well researched and that you don't show up unprepared, I think, is ultimately kind of the messaging here. And I think a really good example might be for parents. If you go to a work party and maybe one of your spouse's work colleagues knows a lot about you, and they start talking about you and they ask you a lot of questions and there's a lot of insight, but you're standing there, you don't know a lot about them. So you ask a lot of the basic questions and it can be a little bit awkward, right? Like, hey, I really don't know that much about you. And you don't want to come off that way for college coaches. So do your homework, get the basics down. But there are some things that you will not be able to find on the internet. And that's really what you should be asking about to utilize the most of your time. Not necessarily over asking a college coach for anything, but showing that you have a very mutual kind of interest in what they're doing, and that's where you're approaching it from, and a genuine interest in what they're doing. So and then just be overly communicative about yourself and what you want a college coach to know about you, and where you're going to be this summer, and what kind of tournaments you're going to be at. Or, hey, coach, I've been working on this training program. I've gained expert in strength here in the last 3 months. So that's okay to overshare with the college coach, because they're not necessarily going to know that about you either. And to kind of offer that up, it's got to be a two-way street in that regard. So a lot of good things to ask, whether it be from the financial standpoint, the cultural standpoint, obviously the athletic standpoint, things that you are genuinely wondering about at that program is pretty much fair game. And I think that, again, the underlying message here is that, hey, coach, I really care about your program. I've done a lot of research on my own, but I also want to know more about your program. And coaches tend to latch onto that a little bit more. So just as you prepare to communicate with college coaches, just know that you're asking the right questions to get the most out of that conversation, but also know that there are some things that you should be avoiding when at least initially having a conversation with a college coach. So if you guys need additional help, come back to NCSA. We're constantly putting on these talks about some of this stuff. We've addressed a few of these things on live before. If you guys want, we host webinars a couple times a week. We'll put the link up in the thing. Actually, DK, I think it'd be above your head. It'd be over here. No, over here. Anyway, we'll put the link up there for you guys.
Somewhere.
Yeah, it'll pop up for you guys to click. And if you want to sign up for that webinar, please do. It's just another way to get some free education on the recruiting process. We'll throw a link in there here in the bottom, but also in the top over here. So, all right, let's get to the Q&A. This has been really long-winded, but it's been good information. Let's get to some questions here. So this is from Maureen Welsh. Can D1 coaches come watch a practice before August 1st, 2020? I assume we're talking about a rising junior at this point.
Yeah, and really it doesn't matter for any age group right now. Again, with the NCAA rules in place, the NCAA has had a dead period where college coaches, the D1 level, are not allowed to go off-campus recruiting or bring student athletes on campus. That's obviously a result of the coronavirus and the COVID. Initially, that date was April 15th, then it was pushed to the end of May, end of June. So right now, end of July, that dead period goes until. So again, D1 coaches cannot go off campus for recruiting, and they cannot have student athletes come on campus for recruiting. So again, that's been a result of COVID. So for right now, that is not the case. If it was a non-COVID time, D1 coaches would be out and about this summer evaluating, looking at kids heading into their senior year, heading into their freshman year in some cases. So again, the coronavirus has just affected recruiting. Again, it's an unprecedented time for the recruiting world. And again, till the end of July, the dead periods in place for D1 coaches to not be able to go off campus to recruit, and cannot bring student athletes on campus to recruit either. This is a great question from Brad. Danny, kids don't typically talk on the phone these days. That's mostly done texting and Snapchatting. So Brad wants to know, how do you prepare a 16-year-old or 17-year-old to initiate a conversation with a college coach? It can be intimidating to be 16, 17-year-old talking to a college coach, trying to kind of figure out your future and how to do that. So what advice would you have for, again, a teenage kid trying to figure out how to connect with a college coach and have an educated conversation?
Now, this is a fantastic question, because I think even sometimes as parents, it can be a little bit overwhelming to have that conversation with a coach who's in a pretty high position that's been around for 20, 30 years. But I think, again, going back to know what the right questions are, to have that kind of confidence, say, hey, coach, I really am good enough to be part of your program down the line. And I really am interested in what you guys are doing, not only as a program, an athletic program, but for your school as well. And then just, again, having the confidence to ask the right questions about learning more, because that's what the conversation is ultimately about. But I think, we kind of equate this to doing an interview to a degree. And for a lot of parents, I think it's a good way to think about that in some cases, if you're a little bit nervous about that, have a mock interview situation, right? Pretend you're that college coach. Maybe put them in a little bit of an uncomfortable, stressful situation. In most cases, it's not going to be uncomfortable or stressful when you're sitting down with a coach. But again, to kind of overdo it and overcorrect it in a certain way so that the student athlete is prepared to sit down in the office face-to-face with that coach and ask questions, or possibly do that over the phone, is going to be important. So I would say best method for doing that, draft up a list of questions that you're genuinely wondering about at that program after you've done your research, and then host somewhat of a mock interview. Could be over the phone, could be in person. And as parents, you can challenge your athletes a little bit, kind of knowing that that's probably not going to be a situation with that college coach direct and face-to-face. I think the other important bit here, just kind of as a footnote, most college recruiting calls don't just come out of the blue. College coaches won't cold call student athletes. They either shoot them a text in advance to set up that time, shoot them an email with some more information about the program up front, and that should give you, maybe a day, 2, a week, something like that, to kind of prepare some things for college coaches. So don't necessarily think that, hey, I'm going to have to do this on the fly at any time, although it's always good to be prepared that way as well.
Yeah, and I think, again, college coaches have been in this situation before, right? They've spoken to 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old kids. So it's not their first rodeo. They know that a student athlete might be a little bit nervous. So again, that's what our recruiting coach team does with the student athletes that have profiles, is they'll set up a half hour to do a mock kind of phone call with a student athlete. So again, practice, it takes reps. First time you ever went to an interview, maybe you were nervous. It's understandable. But again, research and do as much ahead of time as possible to prepare for some of the questions that may come, or questions that you can be asking, which again was one of our topics here. We had a couple good questions here, Danny, regarding the parents' involvement in these conversations with college coaches. We have Patrick wondering, should parents be involved in the academic conversations? And then Ella wondering, how much should a parent be involved in these conversations? As a parent, you're going to be involved in some sense. You don't want to be the one driving the bus. And again, you probably have a different perspective than a 16 or 17-year-old would, that is going to be super helpful for that student athlete and that parent to feel that level of comfortability. So as a parent, you're going to be involved, but you don't want to, again, be the helicopter parent that's taking over that conversation.
Yeah, I would say especially once a student athlete is in the official contact period, it's about building a relationship between the student athlete and the college coach. So, that said, I think kind of going back to something I had said earlier, you want to just be on the same page, have a game plan, have those discussions before it comes to actually speaking with the coach. Ideally, at least it would appear that those questions are coming from the student athlete, which is fair. Again, they're part of that process and they may be wondering those things. Parents do bring a very, very valued perspective to this entire process. And it's not that a college coach is not expecting to hear from a parent, but the parent shouldn't be the primary driver behind that. So maybe once you've had, the student athlete has had the opportunity to meet with the college coach, ask a few of their own questions, then maybe the parent chimes in, hey, appreciate you taking the time to speak with my student athlete here this past weekend. I did have a few follow-up things here about, the academic side of things or the process for financial aid. And that's totally valid, because as coaches, we too understand that parents are going to be thinking about this a little bit differently than their kid will be. And those are questions that we want to make sure as coaches, the parents feel comfortable with, that they are clearly understanding of the process and what you may be able to do for them. And from a coach's perspective, to have mom and dad on board is a pretty powerful thing as well, because they're going to be closest to the student athlete that you're trying to recruit. So don't underestimate the power of the things that the parents are trying to ask. I think that's totally valid. Just allow the student athlete to drive that process forward on their own terms, and then step in when you feel comfortable.
As a parent, don't ask, is my kid going to start right away? That's probably a question you'd want to avoid. And we just posted in the Facebook chat the link to the free recruiting classes we have on this evening. So check that out again if you're looking for some free education and more information. Again, that's what we're here to do, is to provide as much guidance and tools as possible to help families throughout the recruiting process. We'll end with this question. This is a great one, Danny. Dina wants to know, for a future senior, so I assume for a 2021 grad, what time frame would be panic mode? With the dead time, it will be a scramble for coaches. Come August, it'll certainly be a scramble for some student athletes. So if you're heading into your senior year, depends really where you're at in the process. If you haven't done anything yet, if you haven't made any contacts, if you haven't put a video together, if you haven't started to kind of build that online profile, you're probably starting to feel in panic mode. It doesn't mean that you have to wait until this period is over, though. Coaches are online. We know that. We had more coaches in our network in April than any month in the history of NCSA, submitting roster openings, viewing profiles, logging in, trying to get information. One of our colleagues had a conversation with a college coach, a parent of a student athlete in our network, who said, we're logging into the profile as a college coach 5 times a day, no joke, looking at kids. So if you haven't done anything and you're heading into your senior year, Danny, it's important to get going, and don't wait until this dead period ends. There's a lot that you can be doing online, building your profile, getting your video together, researching schools, some of the stuff we're talking about, and start being proactive. Send your information out to schools. Don't wait for coaches to find you. Coaches are online. They're looking to identify and evaluate kids online right now, and you have the ability to do that, to stay connected and not just wait until this ends and start moving on things in August. So don't wait. Get on it now, Danny.
Yeah, and let's be completely upfront about this. The juniors and the seniors got hit the hardest with what's happened, and it's been very fluid over the last 3 months, and we acknowledge that up front. This has not been easy for spring sport athletes that got that taken away from them, their ability to prove themselves in their junior or senior year. It has not been easy for a lot of the juniors and seniors that were continuing on and relying on some of these recruiting pieces like camps, showcases, tournaments, the ability to be in front of college coaches, maybe make that campus visit here over the summer. Again, that got pulled away from them. But I think there's 2 things that we need to address up front. Number one, it's not too late. There's still a lot of opportunity out there. And from the college coaches' perspective, they've had a lot of things pulled away from them as well, some of those conventional methods. So they are coming to NCSA. They are submitting their roster openings. They are doing some other things to continue to communicate with student athletes. And that's the silver lining to all this. That college coaches aren't pulled in a million different ways from a recruiting standpoint. There's one way to get recruited right now. And the best thing that your student athlete can do right now, start to build that NCSA recruiting profile, get that activated into our network for college coaches nationwide. And then, like David said, be proactive. Don't sit back on your heels and say, hey, I'm in the network. Every college coach in the country now knows about me. You're behind if you're just getting started as a rising senior. So you have to a degree, go on the offensive, use the network, NCSA's network, to run searches to find the right schools first, right? Academics included, geographic location, and then raise your hand. Right, we'll do a free recruiting assessment for you, try and help you place what might be a good level, right? But you have to have that confidence as a student athlete to raise your hand and say, Coach, I'm out here, all right? I could be very good for your program. I'm getting it done on the field, in the pool, whatever. I'm a good student, and I've found your program and I like it for these reasons. So let's open up a discussion about me possibly being a part of your program down the line. Again, there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, that is preferred for the very vast majority of college coaches. So take that to heart, right? It's not too late by any stretch of the imagination. It's just time to get going, and it's time to start being comfortable to be an advocate for yourself in this process.
Yeah, I think one more thing to add to that is you have to be realistic to the opportunities that are available. If you're heading into your senior year and you haven't had any contact with coaches and you want to play D1, and if I'm a basketball athlete and I'm reaching out to Duke, North Carolina, and Kansas, probably wasting my time. So you have to be realistic to the opportunities that are out there. Again, there are some schools that are close to being done or already done with their 2021 recruiting class in some sports. So again, certain sports are a little bit different in the timeline and how quickly they recruit kids. But the later you start, the more open and the more realistic you have to be in terms of the remaining opportunities that are out there. So again, a lot of great content here. Again, for asking questions to college coaches, we know it's a difficult thing. There are a ton of questions you could ask. It's the same thing when you're putting together an email to a college coach. But I think the big points are make sure you're doing research. Make sure that you understand that it's more than just about the athletics. It's more than about the academics as well. It's the cultural fit, the environment, the geography, the location, the financial fit. There's a lot of pieces that go into the recruiting process in finding the right fit. And the more prepared you are with questions and how to have those conversations and knowing what to ask and when to ask them, it's just going to make you stand out that much more as a recruit. Because again, you're ultimately competing against hundreds of other kids for one roster spot. So what can you do to separate yourself from the bunch? Again, being prepared, doing research, coming in with again a plan and a list of thoughtful questions can help you stand out and make you even that much more attractive to a college coach. So appreciate the questions. Sorry if we didn't get to all of them here as we get to wrap up. But last thing we want to do here before we sign off is ring our bell. We want to honor some of the commitments that we had recently here at NCSA, part of our 2020 graduating class. A couple of these student athletes were kind of similar to what we just talked about later in the process and got a late start on the recruiting journey, but were able to find homes. So we'll start with Allie McClelland, softball student athlete out of Ohio. She'll be playing her college softball at Bethany, which is in West Virginia. Danny, next one.
Yeah, Ashley Dame. She's going to Illinois Institute of Technology, Illinois Tech for short. Actually, the opportunity to drive around campus just this past weekend. It's on the near south side here in Chicago. Really beautiful campus, very good academic institution. Congratulations to Ashley.
Yeah, Ashley coming from Massachusetts. So again, a student athlete who utilized our network to cast that net wide and really find some opportunities. Again, both those student athletes started the process a little bit later. I was doing some research on their kind of story, and both of them got involved with our network heading into their senior year. Didn't have anything going on. We're able to find an opportunity. So again, if you're heading into your senior year and you're looking for opportunities, let us know. There's still a ton of coaches out there looking for 2021s. Last one, student athlete from Canada, Zenin Kednar. Work with a lot of international student athletes. These are always great to see the success. But Zenin is heading to Indiana Institute of Technology. He'll be playing basketball there as well. So again, a student athlete from Canada, finding a great fit, hopefully for him in Indiana. And look forward to watching those student athletes as they get on to the next level and compete for the next level.
Didn't Larry Bird go to Indiana Tech? Am I wrong?
He went to
that?
Indiana State.
Indiana
State.
Oh, yeah. We had a famous alum come out of Indiana Tech.
Not quite. So awesome. Well, we appreciate you guys tuning in again. A lot of great content that we're pumping out on NCSA, ncsasports.org. Again, the link for the free webinars that we have is in the bottom of the screen, so you can check those out as well. Again, tune in, get yourself educated. Danny, you can speak on it again from a student athlete and a coach. The more you know, the better off you're going to be in this recruiting process. Recruiting is hard. It's complicated. It's difficult. And especially with all the recent coronavirus stuff that's been going on, a lot of little curveballs and wrenches thrown in the recruiting process. So educate yourself. That's the big message.
That's right. We're on top of it, ear to the ground, working with coaches closely, and just trying to figure out how they're doing that just to best help our student athletes. So yeah, continue to pay attention to that. Again, we will link those free webinars here at the top, and then in the link below. But yeah, and again, if you guys have questions or comments, please put them in. We'll continue to get to those. But thank you for being here with us. Please stay safe out there. We want everybody to take care of themselves and their family first and foremost. And then anything related to the recruiting process, come see us at NCSA. We'll talk soon.